Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome, I should say, to the village. Good to see you this morning on this Tuesday, the 15th of September. And again, already this week, lots and lots of changes, and it's really quite difficult to comprehend sometimes from day to day what is going on. Morning, Jenny, lovely to see you this morning. Anyhow, I've put on my prisoner blazer. Those of you who are fans of 50s and 60s cult TV programmes will remember The Prisoner, starring Patrick McGoohan. Massive fan of that TV series I was. Of course, he was abducted and taken to the village, and he was number 6. In fact, such a fan of that programme that it's where I fell in love with the car that appears in the opening sequence, if you've ever watched that. And that was a little green and yellow Lotus 7, which I was very lucky enough to own one for about 11 years. And it was great fun. Anyhow, with our new sort of number 6 or 6 restrictions, I thought this would be a bit appropriate this morning. My prisoner black badge and jacket and number 6 badge. Anyhow, some of you had seen I had a very pleasant day off yesterday. Went down to Studland, booked another beach hut. It was great, National Trust beach hut, £22. Just up there on the sand dune, so was able to sort of be there, make my tea and coffee, and sit and ponder life, the universe, and everything. Though I have to say, a little bit strange. It's just getting used to the family not being around. The vicarage is absolutely empty and deserted this morning, as obviously Kate is at school. Ben has gone off to college in Salisbury, and Alex is up in London. So yeah, it's a bit weird when you get back into spending days off on your own. Of course, I've done it for many years, but I haven't really had a day off completely on my own for well over 6 months, because people have been around and we've been doing things together. So it's always a little bit weird. Anyhow, it was very interesting yesterday, Studland. I know our young people have come in for a lot of criticism in the press and on social media with regard to social distancing and following rules and guidelines. Well, let me tell you, it's not just the young. Studland yesterday was very, very busy. I don't think I've ever seen it that busy on a Monday, even after September. I normally like to get out and about this time of year because the holiday season is over and everything goes quite quiet. And it's great for photography because there's not many people around. But yesterday, Studland was heaving. But I have to say, it was the retireds mainly who were down at Studlands. I saw, you know, people 60s, 70s and 80s down on the beach. Very interesting how they were interpreting the rule of 6, it has to be said. There wasn't a lot of social distancing going on in particular areas. There were some younger people. There were a few sort of 20-somethings with with younger children who obviously aren't at school. But on the whole, it was our great retirees who were down at Studland. So, you know, I think we level a lot of criticism at our young people, but okay, they weren't jumping up and down having a rave. But people are people, and some people will follow the rules and others won't. And that was very, very clear yesterday. So I don't think really age has anything to do with it. Now, of course, I have to say that yesterday evening in Parliament, the most bizarre thing happened, frankly. I cannot believe that I am sitting here this morning saying that the mother of all parliaments actually legislated to break international law last night. And I'm sorry, I think it's utterly disgraceful. I think it's utterly disgraceful. How on earth can we then criticise other countries, particularly China or Russia or these other rogue states in the world, when they flout international law. Just think about what happened here in Salisbury, where people were poisoned and killed by Russian spies, and they were breaking international rules. One, to not allowed to use those kind of chemical weapons, murdering people on international soil, etc., etc., etc. Now, I know the Brexit thing isn't, of the same magnitude. I fully get that. But what is it when a government decides that the rule of law, international law, does not apply to it, and that it decides that it's legitimate to break it? How can we as a nation possibly stand up and speak out against other countries that break international law when we have just passed legislation, or in the process of passing legislation to do so? I hope when this gets to the House of Lords, it is completely kicked into touch. I'm sorry, I know some people will want to support this government, but they are absolutely behaving appallingly. And it is a disgrace, and I'm just fuming this morning. I have family that live in Ireland who can't believe what is going on, and I'm sorry, I think it's an absolute disgrace, and we should be ashamed of ourselves, and Mr. Johnson, our Prime Minister, is a disgrace. I am sorry, I know some people will disagree with me and say clergy wouldn't say this, but I'm sorry, sometimes the clergy need to speak out, and that's what I'm doing this morning. It is just unbelievable what this government thinks it can get away with now, and it does not bode well for the future. So I will stop my rant now and move on. Now, this morning I went into church, and I said morning prayer. I haven't been saying morning prayer in church regularly. I mean, it's been very much my tradition in the past to do sort of morning prayer and evening prayer in the church, ring the bell and this, that and the other. But when COVID came along and we were sort of told not to go into our churches, I didn't go in. And as I can't really have it as a sort of public service because we're in a little chapel, I haven't really done it very much. But I did go in this morning, and I use the, it's a version of the Franciscan office. It's a much simpler office. I find the big Anglican celebrating daily prayer, it's just too wordy, and you get huge chunks of the Psalms, several of them, massive readings from the Old and New Testament. It's just far, far too much. So I prefer this book, Celebrating Common Prayer, the pocket version, which sadly is out of print. It's quite hard to get hold of, but I do have a couple of copies. And I find this office wonderful because it's just the right amount of words. You get a small excerpt from the Psalm, you get a small reading, you get some prayers, you get a canticle, but it's not too much. It's just enough to lead you into that sort of reflective prayer, and it's very helpful. Anyhow, often I use the gospel reading for the day, but as I didn't have my missal with me, I use the set readings, because what it does is it gives you a small set reading for each day. And the one this morning I thought was great, really, because it was something I was sort of pondering yesterday as I sort of sat on a big sand dune overlooking Studland Bay, and all the people coming and going, and all of God's people there. And I was just thinking, this question that maybe many of us have asked who have faith, where is God in all of this? Where is God in all of this? And that's a question I'm sure many of us have asked, and I've asked it too. But the reading this morning, I think, offers us some insight, and it's a very well-known passage, and it's from 1 Kings chapter 19, beginning to read at verse 9. The word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword." I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away. He said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is passing by. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in an earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still, small voice. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Now, it's a well-known passage to all of us, and it spoke to me in two ways this morning. Firstly, it reminded me that, you know, with my rant a few minutes ago, that the prophets in the Old Testament, they ranted at the way the leaders of the day treated the people and had little disregard for both the people and others. And in a sense, Elijah had had one too many rants and they wanted to kill him for it. So it reminded me in a sense of the prophetic ministry that we are encouraged to speak out where we see things like this, even if sometimes it will draw criticism to us. Elijah was brave enough to do that. It also reminded me that sometimes we need to look for God in the unexpected places. God wasn't in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but he was the still small voice. And as that wonderful hymn adds to that line, that still small voice of calm. So today, as I go about the business that I've got to do, various things to do here in Handley, and I've got to go into Salisbury a little bit later on, I'm going to try and have my eyes a bit more open, and I'm going to try and see if I can see the Lord in those unexpected places. And I know that I won't be disappointed, because when I do open my eyes properly, then you can see through all of the discord and the tumult and the turbulence, and then suddenly, well, instead of small voice, there sometimes is a shaft of pure light, and we see God there. So that wonderful passage from 1 Kings 19, 9 to 13. So looking ahead, folks, after this I'm about to send an email to our area bishop, to Bishop Karen, our Archdeacon, because unfortunately we still don't really have clarity as to what we can do with regard to celebrating or worshipping away from our church buildings. I led a webinar last week with the rural chaplain, and we were told by our bishops to encourage people to celebrate harvest away from the church in barns, on farms. But the guidance that came out yesterday from the Bishop of London really just seemed to reiterate what was already there, which is that church buildings and church land, so if you're in your church or church hall or whatever, the vicarage garden here next to the church, then you are there is an exemption from the rule of 6, providing you follow the other social distancing measures, etc., which we've all been doing. What it doesn't say, and what we really need to have in black and white, is it permissible for us to gather on private land or in a barn or somewhere to celebrate harvest or to have a service? Because the landowners need to know this, because they don't want to get fined, and we as a church, church leaders need to know this, because we don't want to get fined if we're gathering people together. So I really hope there is some clarity, because I do know that there are clergy who have got plans underway, even for this weekend, to you know, celebrate worship in other places that are not church buildings and church land. So we do need some clarity on that, and I hope we will get it ASAP. Looking ahead, this coming Sunday we're going to be doing a Matin service down at Pentridge, but we're going to be using recorded music. I'm going to download choral music from some of our cathedral choirs so that we can listen to that, because we've been told that we cannot sing hymns inside or outside the church. I won't get onto that. I've already had one rant this morning. So we're going to be using some piped music. But the plan is Pentridge is pressing ahead with the possibility of celebrating harvest in a barn. And we're still looking at our options in Handley. We had a lovely walk on Sunday, a lovely prayer walk, where we sort of did a circular walk and we used Iona worship as we went round. There was a good group of us. We were into double figures. And I think all of us enjoyed it. And those who were tuned in at home live, I'm sorry that hasn't been posted onto YouTube. The reason for that is because it's like 3 broadcasts that we did over the course of the event. Unfortunately, I don't have the tech to put these all together. If somebody does have some editing material, I'm quite happy to download those 3 clips and send them to them. If they can edit them, then I can load it up onto YouTube as one piece. But unfortunately, the software I have is very, very limited and it won't let me do that. So we had a really good walk, and that's one of the things we are contemplating now for potentially for harvest. If the weather is like this in September, it's only a couple of weeks away, that what we might do is, rather than try and worship in a barn or something, we might walk to somewhere within the parish boundary so we can overlook the farms and the fields and our village, and we'd have an act of worship there, and we're going to tell people to bring along a bring and share picnic. But of course, I can't do that if I do not know that that's actually permissible. So that's what we're waiting to find out. 10 a.m. broadcasts this week will be continuing. It might not be taking place on Thursday because I possibly need to go to up to Oxford with Kate to see her mum, who we sort of look after and is struggling a bit. And if we do, we need to leave relatively early in the morning for that. So apologies if there is no broadcast on Thursday, but I will make a post on Facebook for that, so that you know. So Joel and I could do it for you. Thanks, Sky. That's really helpful. Or let me know if you've got free software or something. Let me know and I'll download that. But that'd be great. Thanks, Sky. Yeah, that's looking at the week ahead. And on Thursday evening, we've got a very important deanery meeting. So our deanery synod, or expanded deanery synod, we are physically meeting in St Mary's Church in Blandford, socially distancing. Both synod reps and church wardens have been invited to this because the new deanery plan, or the new draft deanery plan, is going to be presented to synod and church wardens, and this will explain how the deanery is going to be made up. The neighbouring benefice to us, which is known as the Chase benefice, Reverend Dr. Michael Foster has retired. That post is not being renewed, so that benefice is going to be broken up, and various parishes, including our own, will take some of those parishes, and so that is going to be presented to us, and we are then going to bring it back to discuss with our PCCs and congregations. So that's happening on Thursday. Now, the PCC meeting that was due to happen on Wednesday, we've now postponed that by a fortnight to Wednesday the 30th of September. There's several reasons for this, but the 2 key reasons are, one, that we are still just working on getting our accounts signed off. That has happened, but now that's happened, there are 1 or 2 other things the finance team need to do. They need to produce the report that will go with that, and our projected forecast for the next coming weeks. And both Peter and Mike, who are sort of very, our treasurer, and Mike, who's on the finance team, are also very, very busy people. They've got lots of other things to do as well. So we were sort of coming up against it a bit. So it just gives a little bit more breathing space to sort that out. The other key factor is what I've just mentioned, is the deanery plan. Because it's being presented the day after we would have had our PCC meeting, and we're not likely to have another full PCC meeting for quite some time, it seemed to make sense to let the deanery plan presentation take place and then have our PCC meeting, so that we can discuss that and then feed that back to the deanery planning team, so they know our views. So that's why the PCC meeting has been delayed. Anyhow, folks, that's sort of it for today. I hope you have a good day in whatever you're doing this morning. And I hope, in a sense, we are able to see God in those unexpected places, that still small voice. Let's just close with grace. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. So thanks for being with me this morning, and do take care. Hope you all have a good day.